voice whispered the dawn. A new day is here. Welcome the sun as it rises from the east.
It's kind of quiet around the country. We like quiet. Because if it's quiet, it's too quiet.
See its first rays streaming in the horizon. Catch its warm beams. Watch the flakes of gold dancing on the leaves. It is a beautiful day.
Bright sunny skies, 65 degrees at 7 o'clock in the morning, and sunny and pleasant for the rest of the day.
Arise and shine like the sun.
My name is Donovan Cowan. I just don't like rehashing a lot of this stuff, man. I came here as a baby from Jamaica, 2 years old. I've lived all my life pretty much in New York, Brooklyn, New York. I went and studied accounting. From there, I got a job working at the World Trade Center. I just wanted to, live the basic dream of like getting a job. And then I ended up liking where I was working, really much loved the people, and just wanted to move on in that field once I started working there. Just living the life of a typical New Yorker, enjoying the scenes as much as I could at the time. Talking about September 11th. Yes. It was a typical workday morning. I remember it was a sunny day. We worked in Tool World Trade, and I got there at 8 o'clock, normal day. We worked, I believe our floor was somewhere in the 90s. I don't remember the exact floor anymore. Started my work at my desk, probably had a little bit of the radio on. I remember some kind of a flash hit the building where I was sitting, and like a little bit of a heat thing came, but it just went and gone. So I said, "That's weird. What was that?" And then a few people who were there from the 8 o'clock started milling about and started saying, "Hey, did you see that?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "What was that?" I said, "We don't know. We didn't hear anything." And at some point somebody said, I said, "I think something hit the building, the other building." And I said, "Oh, really?" So a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, her name was Doris, came by, and she was like, "Donovan," he says, "Did you hear that?" I said, "I really didn't hear anything, but I saw the flash and felt the heat." So she said to me, I said, "I think we should maybe go down and maybe leave." Some people were milling about, saying to stay. But I said, "Yeah, let's go down." We really didn't know what had happened, but it was a very weird feeling. So we said, "Let's go down to the ground and see, if everything was okay." So in order to get down, our bank of the elevator goes from whatever floor we were on down to 77, where all the express elevators take you to the ground. So we got in the elevator to go down to that floor where we take the express elevator. We pressed the button I think it started to go down, and I think the second it went down, all of a sudden, you just heard and felt this big kind of explosion. And then all of a sudden, we started feeling an intense amount of heat come down on us. So I grabbed Doris, and we were hugging each other, and we were screaming, much to the effect of like, oh my God, what is happening? Oh my God, please make it stop, those kind of things, because the heat was very, very intense. Violent shaking of the elevator was going on. I can't sense it. It had to be at least maybe still going down, maybe falling to the point. I don't know. I remember the shaking more than that. So finally, after felt like a few, maybe 10, 15 seconds of violent shaking, I have no concept of the time, it finally stopped. And we were there. And I said, Doris? And she's like, yeah. I said, are you okay? She said, yeah. She's like, I don't know what happened. I said, I don't know. Looked up. Somehow the doors of the elevator were open. And we were on that floor where you get off to go to the express elevator. So I said, okay, we got to try to get up. We got up and we walked out of the elevator. And she kind of said something to the effect of, Donovan, I can't feel my feet. I can't feel anything. And somehow, for some reason, I was able to walk. So I said, okay. I said, Doris, just lay here. I'm going to walk into the lobby and see what, I can do, I knew something, was wrong, but you're just under the effect of like that heat and the burning. So it's like, you're just going by instinct, I guess, at the time. I walked into the lobby, and what I saw was just, you think of any of the worst horror films that you've ever seen in your life, but a horror film is fake. This was a horror film that came to life, because what I saw was maybe the people who maybe have already gone there who were waiting for the express elevator. They must have gotten hit with the full blast of the plane hitting. Maybe it was the fire, maybe it was the gasoline, maybe it was the heat, I don't know. But I just saw a lot of like people, some people moaning on the ground, some body parts you saw were, all over the place. It was just total destruction. And it was almost like at that moment that I was like saying, oh my God, what happened? What just happened? A couple of the windows were blown out. And I said to myself, what could have blown out these windows? These windows are supposed to be kind of like almost indestructible, And the place started filling up kind of like with smoke. And I was having trouble breathing, And for a second, I looked at one of those open windows, and being on the 77th floor, I almost was thinking of like, oh my God, I've got to take a chance and maybe jump, because I couldn't take it. So at the, almost at the minute of that thought, I heard some guy from a distance, maybe down the other end of the place where we were waiting, and said, "There's a staircase here. There's a staircase here." So I said, "Okay." I screamed out to Doris, and there was not really any answer. And I said to myself, I've got to move, because if I stay here, I'm going to die, pretty much, or I just knew something was really bad at this point. So I followed the voice, and there was a staircase there, and all burnt up, I proceeded to just say, all right, I gotta go down these stairs. And I was just going down in my head, 77, 76, 75. At one point, I passed the guy who was coming up the stairs, and he saw me. And he was like, oh my God, man. He says, keep going. I said, okay, yes, sir. I don't know if he was a fireman. Maybe he was on his way up. I don't know who it was to this day. But I came down all the way, got down to the first floor, walked out. I see a lot of people running around. I see firemen. I see this, and I'm like, okay, something is really going on wrong here. I start heading towards the outdoors, and the guy sees me, EMS worker. He screams out, maybe his partner, and says, "Oh, I got one here! I got one here! I got one here!" And he says, "Come with me! Come with me!" And I told him, I said, "Listen, man, there's people upstairs that they need help." He's like, "All right, man." He says, "All right." He said, "But we got to get you to the hospital. You need help." So I said, "Yeah, okay." And he took me in, and they started to pull off. And I just remember as he pulled off, I hear him say, "Oh my God." He says, "The building's coming down. Drive, the building's coming down."
You can see the two towers. A huge explosion now, raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way.
He drove, and I'm like saying to myself as I'm laying in the ambulance, I'm like, what does he mean the building's coming down? What does that mean, the building's coming down? He's like, what building? What's he talking about? I didn't know which hospital I was going to. I just remember coming out, being wheeled in, and I remember the doctor asking me my name. "Do you remember your name?" I said, "Yes, my name is Donovan Cowan." I forgot if he asked a couple more questions, and then after that, I just remember just kind of going under. In my thought, I said, "Oh, I must be dying." That was it from that day.
Donovan sustained a tremendously bad injury. Donovan is getting out of the hospital. We didn't think Donovan was dead.
So I believe I was in the hospital, give or take 6 months.
And for us, this is a sensational day.
I was placed in a medically induced coma. I must have been under some heavy medication because I just remember little incidences. I remember the day of a press conference with my mom.
Just knowing that I had a family behind me that wanted me to survive gave me the will to do it.
There were times when we didn't think Donovan would make it. After he sustained a 50% burn to his body and severe inhalation injury with all the gas that had been emanated from the explosion. He managed, with those injuries, to walk down. I think this demonstrates the best survivability of the human nature.
He's got his cousin and sister-in-law here, and I'm happy to tell you also that he is, for the first time,
She's played a significant role. I really like to thank her You know, I consider myself lucky that I'm surviving because I heard so many of my friends died.
I asked about Doris, and a friend told me that she was all right. She was all right. I said, oh, okay, good, good. And then they kind of conferred in a corner. And then they came back to me and they told me that she didn't make it, you know. So that was one of the first things I remember.
What's the first thing you want to do?
You got a Slurpee.
I think I was just, in essence, happy to take it the next step to getting home, you know, which is where I wanted to be. And for the people who experienced 9/11 from that kind of capacity, it'll always be there. There's still some elements of like the burning that have affected a lot of nerves and stuff like that, some lung stuff. And as you get older, these things seem to be getting worse. So I went back and looked at the plaques on by myself and by the fountain, you know, and it's just like walking around there, looking at the names. Yeah, it's very emotional. Just looking at the whole area, you know, it's like, this is the place where at lunchtime I used to go out to the Globe sometimes and eat my lunch, or I was working so hard, sometimes I'd just go out there and take a nap. It was just a weird experience, yeah. Every day is about survival, you know, and that's what you have to do, whatever it kind of like takes to like keep yourself moving, to keep yourself kind of engaged, you know, because, you know, as the years go on, you know, it doesn't get easier. But then on the other hand, you also have to thank God, you know, that, you know, I could be going through worse, and you definitely see people going through worse. I think it's just about survival and finding ways, you know, to get through days and make yourself feel good and get yourself to a point where you can still be there for others, you know, when you can. My family, you know, was there for me 100%. You know, I could never forget that. My mom, my brothers, and my nieces, who I love dearly. And the greatest pleasure is hanging out with them and being with them, you know. So you just want to just keep those moments going as much as you can for as long as you can.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.